February 2nd, 1996, Moses Lake, Washington. Barry Lukaitis, a 14-year-old honor student, shoots his algebra teacher in the back and 2 students in the chest. October 1st, 1997, Pearl, Mississippi. 16-year-old Luke Woodham begins the day by stabbing his mother to death, then goes to school with a rifle under his trench coat. He kills 2 students and wounds 7. December 1st, 1997, West Paducah, Kentucky. 14-year-old Michael Carneal opens fire on a student prayer circle inside his high school. 3 are killed. 5 more are wounded. March 24th, 1998, Jonesboro, Arkansas. 11-year-old Andrew Golden and 13-year-old Mitchell Johnson pull a fire alarm, then stage a military-style ambush on students and teachers fleeing their middle school. A teacher and 4 students are killed. 9 more students and a teacher are wounded. April 20th, 1999, terror strikes Littleton, Colorado. 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold storm into Columbine High School with a sawed-off shotgun, automatic weapons, and bombs. They kill 12 classmates and a teacher. 23 more are wounded. Then they kill themselves. When we heard about these shootings, we all searched for explanations. Each incident raised the same questions. Why are our children no longer safe in our schools? How can we protect our kids? And why did these shootings occur?
These were all incredibly premeditated, prior planned operations of significant magnitude. And we've got to understand that they really began when these children were 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. And it actually is years and years and years in the making before we finally see these horrendous manifestations.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman is a former U.S. Army Ranger. He is also the author of a Pulitzer Prize-nominated book and a former associate professor of psychology at West Point. Colonel Grossman has pioneered the systematic study of how and why we kill. For 25 years in the military, he trained soldiers to kill. He is amazed at the skill and marksmanship displayed in many of these school shootings.
The FBI says that the average officer in the average engagement hits with approximately 1 bullet in 5. Michael Carneal fires 8 shots at 8 different milling, scrambling, screaming children. How many hits does he get? 8 shots, 8 hits, 5 of them headshots, the other 3 upper torso. And remember, prior to stealing this gun and firing some practice shots, he had never before in his life shot a pistol.
What he finds even more amazing is that these kids are capable of killing at all.
There is a profound problem with getting soldiers to kill one another at point-blank range. There appears to be a resistance at the moment of truth, and that resistance has to be overcome.
Grossman says overcoming this resistance is a problem that has existed in armies and in warfare through the ages.
The job of the Army and the Marine Corps is to take anybody's kid and turn them into killers. We know how to do it. We know we can do it with any child.
Colonel Grossman has come to a startling conclusion. The psychological factors that allow soldiers to kill in combat are at work in our popular culture. training kids to kill.
If you're going to kill somebody, you need three things. You need a weapon, you need the skill, and you need the will. This provides 2 out of 3. All you've got to do is see what the kids are being scripted to do to get the high scores, and you know that in a very short period of time, their dark fantasies are going to become your tragic reality.
December 1st, 1997. Just after the Thanksgiving weekend, 14-year-old Michael Carneal went to school with 5 rifles, a pistol, and 1,000 rounds of ammunition.
He held the gun up in a two-handed stance. He never fired far to the left, never far to the right, never far up, never far down. He just put 1 bullet in everything that popped up on his screen. Now what was he doing? He was playing a video game, and he is racking up as high a score as he could get.
Grossman believes that violent video games had conditioned Carneal to kill.
Countless thousands of times he had practiced killing, and he had practiced denying the humanity of his targets. So when real targets popped up in front of him, he killed, and he killed remorselessly, just as he had been conditioned to do countless thousands of times in the comfort of his own home and in video arcades.
Grossman feels that violent video games are one of many factors that desensitize children. Others are violent TV shows and violent movies.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
For over a year, he was unable to sleep in his own bed because he was obsessed with the idea that there was somebody under the bed that would cut up through the bed with the chainsaw. He was unable to take a shower without packing 3 towels against the small heater vent that's down low on the floor, because he was terrified with the idea that somebody was watching him through that heater vent.
But Grossman and his theories are not without critics. Are video games and television really to blame?
All of us have been red with rage, and yet at the moment of truth, we did not reach for guns, we did not reach for knives, we did not cave in throats, we did not gouge out eyes, we did not kill. Why? The answer is that there appears to be a natural resistance within most healthy human beings.
But in the case of the school shootings, this safeguard clearly failed to work. What switches off this safeguard? In bedrooms, living rooms, dens, and kitchens, the television is a standard fixture. It offers up a world of choices and channels, movies and video games, and the internet. Among the offerings is violent programming. The American Medical Association says the average American child will view 200,000 violent acts, including 16,000 murders on television, before the age of 18. Colonel Grossman believes that the high level of violence on television causes violence in society.
Up until a child is 5, 6, sometimes even 7 years old, they cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. That means that when they see somebody being shot, stabbed, raped, brutalized, degraded, murdered, for them it is real. And they're becoming convinced that the world is a dark, desperate, brutal place. They're being brainwashed, traumatized, and brutalized in the same way that basic training does to our young privates, but without the safeguards.
Payday.
Not every child who watches people being killed and butchered on television is going to become a violent person, but a tiny percentage of them will. And our society turns around and pays the price for having systematically abused our children over the public airwaves and in the movie theaters.
The Centers for Disease Control ranks homicide as the leading cause of death among young people in the United States, accounting for 20% of all deaths of people aged 10 to 24. In 1980, the CDC asked Dr. Brandon Centerwall to investigate spreading levels of violence. Dr. Centerwall says it was like mapping a new virus.
There were a whole range of explanations or ideas, such as the post-World War II baby boom, changes in economics, civil unrest. Television was one factor that people were talking about.
After 7 years of investigation, television was the only factor he could not rule out.
If you knew when a population had acquired television, you could predict quite closely when their rates of murder would increase, which was about 10 to 15 years later. Hypothetically, the television technology had never been developed, there would today be approximately 10,000 fewer murders each year in the United States, approximately 70,000 fewer rapes, and about 700,000 fewer assault injuries.
Another expert who sees this link between television and violence in the United States is Dr. Russell Skiba.
The rate of violent death due to gunfire among children is 12 times that of the next 25 industrialized nations combined. In 1995, a UN study showed that the United States is responsible for 86% of all childhood firearm deaths in the world.
Dr. Skiba is a psychologist who has served on the President's Task Force for School Safety. He cites a number of studies that supports this linkage.
The Surgeon General, National Institute of Mental Health, American Medical Association, American Psychological Association have all concluded that there's a strong correlation between viewing of TV violence and children's aggression.
If we were trying to systematically raise a generation of children who were capable of indiscriminate killing, we could not do a better job than what we are doing through the media today.
Dr. Stanton Samanow disagrees.
Television does not change a responsible person into a violent offender. You have to consider the mind that already is fascinated by, absorbed by, and interested in violence before it ever watched the violent program.
Colonel Grossman, who has trained hundreds of Army recruits, rejects these arguments.
What we are doing is systematically destroying the natural, healthy, and if you will, God-given resistance to killing that exists in the children across America. And the result is a virus of violence.
What is it that broke down the resistance to killing in these children? Are violent video games teaching our children to embrace violence as a way of life? On April 13, 1997, at 1:15 a.m., 18-year-old Wesley Schaefer and a friend decided to rob a local convenience store.
From a distance of 7 or 8 feet away, a boy with a little short-barreled .38 pistol whips off this snapshot. Now, he's never fired more than a couple of boxes of shells in his life, and he hits the clerk right between the eyes and blows his brains out. And once again, we see the remarkable accuracy that these kids have got.
Colonel Grossman interviewed Schaefer when asked to serve as an expert witness at the murder trial.
He has no plan to kill anybody. But as he walks into that store, what's happening to his heart rate? It's going up. What's happening to the forebrain? It's closing down. And now, like a child in a fire drill, like a pilot in a flight simulator, he's a product of his conditioning. What has he been conditioned to do? And Wesley Schaefer looked me in the eyes and he said, "I wish I had back all the quarters I'd put in that stupid lethal enforcer in Operation Wolf." Because you see, what he'd been conditioned to do, countless thousands of times, is to hold a gun in his hand and to fire at human targets that pop up in front of him. If you think it can't happen to your kid, you're in abject denial. Like guns, we say that these simulators, these murder simulators, are not something that the child needs to have their hands on.
I would not have a problem with saying you have to be 18 years old to buy, certain rated product.
Robert Atkins is one of the founders of the home computer and online action game industry.
I would not allow my child to view or play anything with questionable content that they're not mature enough for.
Atkins thinks other parents are also making informed choices.
If little kids are playing these games, unless they have trust funds where they can go out and they have a butler who takes them to the store, it means mom and dad's bringing these games home and buying these games for them.
He insists that the violent scenarios in the games and the graphic language in advertising are targeted squarely at adults.
We make games that we want to play, and if you walk around the office, you see who we are, and we are males in our mid to late 20s, early 30s, and that's the type of market that we're pushing for. They're not made for kids whatsoever.
The games are a form of creative expression that invite participation in a fantasy world, he says, but they do not lead to violence in reality.
The leap that it takes going from a keyboard and mouse to holding a handgun or holding a shotgun is huge.
Even so, he says the murders at Columbine High School had a profound effect on his industry.
We were horrified, absolutely horrified that what had happened. And then when, we found out that video games were like possible culprit, we were just like in disbelief. We couldn't believe that something this horrific would ever have any connection to what we do as an industry. But this has opened our eyes, to, hey, let's reconsider what we're doing a little bit. Maybe we can come up with new techniques that aren't questionable and just have the same outcome.
But for Grossman, the effect of their work has fatal consequences. He says obsessive play with violent video games can result in violent actions.
They're on autopilot. And what they do on autopilot in the video games, as they've rehearsed countless thousands of times, is they shoot every single creature in front of them until they run out of bullets or they run out of targets. They're fulfilling the script that has been given to them. All of these variables interweave. Guns are part of the equation. The video games are part of the equation.
Particularly in an elementary school setting, we tend to think that this is a utopia and we don't have those sorts of problems. But now we have elementary school-age children who are killing other children or who have the potential to be harmful to themselves and others. I think we're all vulnerable.
Oh, sweet. I almost killed that guy. I almost killed that flat-nosed Nazi. How do you... Shoot him!
When you get into the game, you're fully concentrating on it and nothing around you. I just think more on the game. I kind of just let real life slip back a little bit. I just more relax. It's not like I have to worry about everything. I can just take a little break from reality. I'd have to say the gun games are my favorite. Well, I've actually played against a cop before on a gun game in an arcade. After we're done playing, I noticed I had better accuracy than a cop. His was a 29, mine was a 33% accuracy. I have noticed that I am really getting good with guns.
And not just play guns. Rami has taken his new skills to the backyard.
I started off shooting at paper plates, and the first 3 shots hit the paper plate.
Rami is so smart, he's very, very intelligent, and we're only hoping that he can channel into something positive, where he will become something, or he'll either be a rocket scientist or he's going to become a criminal.
What redeeming social value is there to children playing with instruments that are at best firearms training devices and at worst murder simulators? No value. What's the potential harm? Significant, catastrophic. In 1998, the United Nations, with a major UNESCO study, has chimed in with an assessment of thousands and thousands of studies and meta-studies of studies that has come to the conclusion that a worldwide culture of violence is being fed by media violence, and in particular, American media violence.
Let's party.
There are literally thousands of sound, scholarly studies on this topic. We have done experiments, we have done longitudinal studies, we have done correlational studies, we have done everything imaginable. If we do the right thing, we may actually start making progress. But the capacity to teach our kids to kill and teach them to like it, to give them the skill and the will to kill, that capacity is going to be there, and anybody who feeds it to their children will reap what they have sown.